All right, everyone, welcome back. And today, just going a little bit deeper into a conversation here with Adrienne. Have Adrienne back here with us. And I really want to challenge your thinking, challenge your beliefs, which might be a trigger. This might be a triggering episode, which is fine. That's actually really good. I talk about triggers a lot on just about every episode. I go into triggers and I talk about my own triggers. Well, today might be a triggering episode for you. You might hear some things that we talk about that might push against your comfort zone, might push against your paradigms. We've talked about paradigms in the last couple of episodes, and that's good. Once again, like I said, that's what is going to help you grow. That's what's going to help you become the version of yourself that's what you want to become, right? What you want to be. So I've got some different concepts, some different things that I want to discuss. One of them being we're going to talk about a three-sided coin. That a coin has three sides, and how standing on the edge of that coin is very important in terms of trying to figure out the truth. So one thing that's going on in the world today, and you might be seeing it, and if you're not, you're probably not paying attention. But if you're listening to us, I'm sure you are. A lot of noise out there, a lot of distractions, a lot of people fighting against each other. A lot of people think that they are right and fighting against the other person. And I'm not here to debate whether something's right or something's wrong. That's not for me to judge. That's not for me to decide. I'm not going to ask Adrienne to do that either. You have the ability to choose for yourself what you believe. But here's my pushback. I would challenge you to look at everything from this three-sided coin, from the edge. Find people that believe the way you do, similarly, but then also try to find people and really listen to other people that have the opposite view, the opposite side of your deep-hearted belief. Now, that's tough, and that's the triggering part. That I get that. That's very difficult. So Robert Kiyosaki, huge influence of mine as far as he's been a person of influence that's helped really mold the way I think. And that's something that he brought to my awareness was this three-sided coin. And when he did that for me, that's allowed me then to approach financial situations from differently. He's helped me think through different business ideas differently. Obviously, you could talk about the political landscape. You could talk about relations. You could just really apply that to every aspect of your life. And if you get good at that, or at least let's just say better at that, you're going to set yourself apart from a lot of people in your current circumstances. And when you do that, you're going to be able to see things a little bit more clearly. Now, if you just discount the idea of right versus wrong, right, you need to take that out of your vocabulary as much as you possibly can. I don't think there necessarily is a right or a wrong. There might be a right for me and a wrong for you, which once again, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea of just questioning everything as far as you possibly can. We're going to talk about money today. That's a subject that Adrienne and I were talking about before we hit record today. That once again, if you hear some things that are triggering today, that's a good thing. Go a little bit deeper. Dig into that. Why are you getting triggered by these ideas and these thoughts? That's where you can start making some growth, start making some strides in your own life out there. And when you do that, you're going to be able to see things, like I said, a little bit more clearly. You're going to be able to think a little bit more clearly, maybe reduce some of the anxiety, stop some of the depression, just all the different, mental anguish that's going on in our lives, right? We've got the monkey mind going on all the time. Just slow those things down with some of the things we've been discussing here the last couple of weeks with our paradigms. But today, I thought we would try to maybe trigger some folks with some different ideas, but really starting with that idea of the three-sided coin. You've got heads, you've got tails, and then you've got the edge. Okay. And the edge is where you want to spend most of your time looking on both sides of whatever topic is being discussed. So Adrienne, I know you and I have had this discussion several times, but let me bring you in as far as, tell me more about what your thoughts are when we have this first initial discussion about this three-sided coin.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I do in my day-to-day life, so for those who don't know, I am a bartender. So I come in contact with any and everybody. Um, is the best way to put it. So I hear a lot of different opinions. I hear a lot of different people question my beliefs. Um, People will sit and debate certain people. Some people will avoid the topic entirely. It just kind of depends on who you're talking to. But I got asked the other day by one of my patrons, um, he started to dive into a political belief of his, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, am I offending you? Like, I don't want to offend you." And I was like, "No, that's okay." And I was like, "In all honesty, I try to stay pretty neutral, as far as all of my opinions across the board. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter if it's political, relationships, um, that they're again kind of drifting away from those paradigms we've talked about here in the past, trying not to get into the good, bad, right, wrong. I try to stay as neutral as I can, as much as I can in those situations, because there's pluses and minuses to both sides. People have their pros and cons on both sides, and then I just try to take them all, not necessarily internalize them all, but process them. Take the good, take the bad, compare, contrast, and then still just try to remain as neutral as I can. I've found that that's easier when talking to certain people, because then you can um, find easier ways to question their beliefs or to push them further into their deeper thinking by being neutral. And just come to it from a place of just trying to learn more. Just tell them my biggest thing I always say is I'm not necessarily as educated as I'd like to be on that topic. Can you tell me more about it? I don't have enough information to form an opinion that strong of my own quite yet, but I'm looking to find more information on it. So if you have some, I would love to hear what you have to say. But I just try to stay on the edge, even though like they might think they're swaying me one way or the other. I know within me that I want to stay on the edge. I want to try to stay as neutral as I can. And it helps be able to navigate the world even better. So that way you're not getting triggered or offended or anything when so and so like down the road who you don't even know is sitting in a busy coffee shop and your ears perk up because you hear something you don't necessarily appreciate or agree with. So that way you don't spend the rest of your day all frustrated because I can't believe he said that in a public place. You know what I mean? It's easier, just helps you be, for lack of a better term, just unbothered um, by people, and because there are strong beliefs out there and they're not always going to align with yours.
Once again, taking away that right versus wrong.
Hmm.
So as we were being brought up our entire lives through the school system, we was always, when we talked about that in a previous episode, it's always either an A or an F, and it's either you're right or you're wrong. And people of authority over us and around us always try to get us to pick sides. It's either you're on this side, or you're on that side, and it's once again, it's becoming an independent thinker. That's what I want to encourage everyone here today, is to work towards becoming an independent thinker. That's what I try to do with my children. Hopefully you're picking that up. Even listen to Adrienne. Yes, she thinks maybe similarly to the way I do, but at the same time, I try to push back on a lot of her thoughts and her ideas and just make sure that she checks both sides of the story. So we started off talking a little bit about politics maybe here today, and that's not what this episode is about. It's more about every aspect of your life. So the question that I would like to pose to you right now here at the beginning is where in your life are you really just following the crowd? Where is it in your life that you're just regurgitating information that you're hearing that's like mass media, mass everybody else, versus once again standing on that edge of that coin and going deeper with information these days? You can go as deep as you want. Information is free and it's abundant. Now, you need to check your sources and make sure that those sources are good sources as well. But at the same time, taking the opportunity to be an independent thinker and go deeper into your own thoughts. When you get triggered, when you have a deep core belief in something, that's going to set you apart, as I mentioned, from most of the people out there. When things are going bad for others, remember, the flip side of that is exactly happening at the same time. That law of polarity. When something's good, it's also very bad, and vice versa. When things are bad, it's also very good. And you've got to be able to have your mental ability, your ability to think through that, think through those situations, and really understand and comprehend that as deep as you possibly can. And that's where this three-sided coin comes in. When you stay as neutral as you possibly can, you're going to be able to see problems or challenges as they arise. You're going to be able to think through them, right? You're going to be able to think through them positively and negatively, and then take the proper course of action to whatever's required to get you through that situation. But here's what, once again, just want to bring this up one more time. But where is it in your life that you are being led by other people? It can be family, it can be coworkers, it can be the media on TV, it can be social media, it can be many different layers to that. But where have you given up control of your thinking and of your beliefs to others that may or may not be accurate? I'm not going to say true. I'm not going to say right or wrong. I'm just saying maybe not be as accurate for you in your current situation. Once again, what I see is a lot of people won't want to think for themselves, and so they like to place blame. It's like it's his fault or their fault or whatever's fault. But in reality, if you take this in-house, get in the driver's seat of your own life with your own thinking, get on the edge of the coin and start seeing both sides, positive and negative, start making decisions based on that information that you gather, and continue to move forward towards this bigger vision you have for yourself. That's when you're going to start seeing some clarity show up in your life, and you're going to start accomplishing more for you and for your family, for your immediate circle. And I would argue that's the most important piece. You can't, once again, I understand we have communities. We need to be involved in our communities. We need to try to help as many people as we possibly can. But if your boat that you're on and that you're independent person, right? If you're struggling, start there. It's that whole put your mask on first when the cabin loses pressure in the airplane, right? Focus on you first to get your house in order, then go to your immediate surroundings with your family, and then move out into your community. That's where I would also like to maybe take this discussion as well. So any thoughts on that, Adrienne?
I just want to say it was funny you brought up the boat analogy because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, if you're in a sinking boat, you have to find where the water is coming in before you keep trying to scoop it back out. Because if the water is still going to keep coming in, you can scoop and scoop and scoop until you run out of energy, but the water's going to keep coming in. You have to figure out where the problems are coming from, where the triggers are coming from, and learn how to navigate those for yourself. It's okay, and it's wonderful to have peers, to have mentors, to have people to rely on. But at the end of the day, the one person you will always have to talk to is yourself. And if you can't navigate difficult times, difficult thoughts, difficult feelings for yourself, you're impeding on your own progress. So,
It's outsourcing. That's the word that was coming to my
yes,
mind.
thank you.
So you're outsourcing areas of your life, whether it's your health, wealth, relationships. We talk about health, wealth, and legacy here on the podcast. You're outsourcing those areas of your life, those pillars of your life, and you pick what's important to you. Those are my 3 pillars. You pick yours. In any of those areas, are you outsourcing those ideas, outsourcing those thoughts to other people to dictate back to you what to believe? So think about it. So once again, as we were brought up, we're told and taught to, with authority, right? You're taught to basically just listen to and follow authority. Now question that authority. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it black? Is it white? Is it, what area of gray is there in that authority? I'm not saying that any authority is, so that's where it's a little bit difficult. But if you become a critical thinker, an independent thinker, you can start taking this back in-house. You can quit outsourcing these areas of your life. I know you were working. You mentioned you were a bartender. You were at an event last night full of, I heard it was about 200 people. And this individual was talking to investors about, I'm going to let you give the details a little bit because this is where the money part of the conversation will come in. And I just want to push back a little bit based on what I was hearing, the conversation that was going on in that room. I wasn't there, so I have to go off of what I was told. But help me with, so this is an example of outsourcing, and I see it a lot. And so this is where I just want to push back if you're listening to us today and try to recognize that within your own life and try to start bringing some of these ideas back in-house. But right now we're going to pivot a little bit into the financial realm as far as outsourcing. So tell me about what was going on a little bit last night. You don't have to get into a lot of the details, but yeah, at least maybe, paint a broad stroke picture of what was going on.
Yeah. So as you were saying, I was working last night, so I probably don't have the best pictures. I'll try my best. Uh, but like you said, it was about 200 people. They were investors, and it was almost an appreciation event for investors. It was a financial advisor was who put on the whole event. Um, and he had a 45-minute presentation that he gave last night. And quite a bit of it was about wars and foreign affairs and about how they are portrayed in the media as being really bad for our economy, for how things are going. But he showed proof in that it doesn't necessarily affect us as much. But one of his biggest points that he started and finished his presentation with that piqued my interest was he brought up gold. He brought up investing in gold, which I know is something that you have talked about here on the podcast before, and it's something you and I talk about pretty frequently. It's something we feel strongly in ourselves about. Um, and he asked the room, he said, "Does anyone know the price of gold?" And it was pretty quiet for as many people as there were in the room. And then he said, "Okay, that's okay. Does anyone know the trend of gold as far as its value, as far as its price?" And they were like, "Well, it's going up." And he goes, "Exactly." He said, "And one thing you've been taught about investing from the beginning is you buy low, sell high. So my biggest advice to you would be to not buy gold. Do not buy gold because it is going up and it's going to keep going up. And there are people who are selling it to you at that high value who bought low and they're taking advantage of you and you're not going to make as much money as they did. So don't buy because it's going up." What
Yeah.
do you think?
What do I think? You're going to throw that
Yeah.
back onto me after you said all that? Wow.
Yeah. I just set the scene. Tell us what you're thinking?
My mind is going nuts. So here, folks, once again, just understand. So don't even take what I'm saying as being 100% accurate. The point is you're going to get different sides of information, and I need you to go out there and do your own investigation. The good news is with cell phones and technology and AI and all, you can get a lot of information in a relatively short period of time. You don't have to go to the library. You don't have to all different kinds of stuff like we used to even just a it's amazing. It's just actually just a few short years ago, in my opinion. But anyways, that's beside the point. The question of so this is a perfect example, and that's why I wanted to bring this up of outsourcing. So there were 200 people in this room taking this gentleman's information, what he was sharing, as being the truth. Now, I know based on the study that I've done and the work that I've done as far as learning financial markets to learning what true money is, all of those kinds of things, that statement, what he was sharing with this group, isn't actually very accurate. Let me just put it that way. I'm not saying he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. So here's the best part is you're going to find people on both sides of this argument. So that's where you want to try to stay on the edge, that three sides of this coin. He's certain. So that maybe let's bring that word into this conversation. What I try to look for is for people that are certain, like they're 100% certain that it's this way. When in reality, it's like, I always try to push back on that. We were at a conference, COVID time, 2021-ish, right? And everybody at that conference was certain that the economy was going to keep going and investing in multifamily properties and debt, and all this stuff. They were certain that it was never going to come to an end. And guess what? It's coming to an end quickly for a lot of those folks, which is unfortunate. But my point with that statement is that you need to look for certainty and then question it. The discussion about gold, whether it's money, all that, that's probably a deeper question for this episode here today. Maybe put that in your memory bank, Adrienne. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit deeper, right? And I want you to ask me some questions. But at the same time, the point that I want to bring home with this episode here today is to question that. So these folks are sitting in a room. They're actually giving this gentleman their hard-earned dollars. And I want to have that separation as well. Dollars versus money, that's another conversation. We'll have that at a later date as well. They're taking their hard-earned dollars and they're giving it to this gentleman based on a belief system. He's investing that money to win, lose, who knows? I don't know what his track record is, and that's not the point. The point that I want to try to make, though, is that these folks are, I don't want to say blindly, because they're making a choice, but they're not questioning whether or not he's accurate with his statements. Based on what you shared with me, Adrienne, and your mom was in the room last night too, and she shared very similar experience, I would push back. That's not an accurate statement. Gold is not an investment. Now that this might be some triggering thoughts out there, folks. So once again, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I just want you to wrap your mind around this as best as you possibly can. Gold is not an investment. Gold is a store of value of your purchasing power moving in the future. So it's not, you don't want gold, just like you don't want dollars. You want what dollars will buy. I want what gold will buy in the future. The difference is that the dollars that you're saving are losing purchasing power rapidly every single day, which is why prices are increasing. It's taking more dollars to buy that same widget tomorrow, or it's taking more to buy it tomorrow than it is today. And that's a little bit oversimplified, and it's a little bit more detailed than that. But that's what this inflation that's going on in our current environment, that's what that is. Now, gold, it's not, as I mentioned, it's not an investment. It stores the value so that it keeps up with this level of inflation. I was mentioning this to your mom, and I mentioned this to you, Adrienne, as well. Actually, I was having the conversation with Riley about it as well. That if you we are taught to price everything in dollars. That's what we've been taught to believe. Now, I'm talking obviously to our U.S. folks. You can put this into any currency. It doesn't matter what currency you're listening to us in, because I know we have listeners all over the world, and thank you for being here. We truly appreciate it. But the idea, though, is that you've got to quit. I would encourage you. So there again, I'm going to try not to speak in absolutes. I would encourage you to try this mind shift exercise and not price everything in dollars. Price them in ounces of gold. And if you do that, you will see that actually prices of things, prices of widgets, prices of cars, houses, food, everything is actually decreasing rapidly in the value of gold or other hard assets. Silver you can throw in there as well, but we're specifically talking about gold today. So it's the purchasing power of your currency is losing its value, and it's done on purpose. Once again, that's a conversation for another day. That will take you some deep investigation to figure that out. And I would encourage you to go down that road. Start finding folks that are speaking and talking similar to what I'm speaking here today, because you could easily find the people that are talking about the opposite, that the stock market's the way to go and don't invest in this because it never goes up or it's never going to go down and all that just stuff. I'm not even going to try to put a label on it. It's just stuff. But with that said, remember, it's your purchasing power. That's what you're trying to protect. You're trying to protect against losing purchasing power in the future. So for example, my wife and I, we currently rent our home. We have a dream of purchasing a home in the future I'm not sure exactly what the price is going to be. I have an opinion that prices are probably going to be coming down in the near future. Near is relative. It can be a year, it can be 10 years. I don't know what that time frame is. But my goal or my plan is to convert these hard assets over into what I truly want, which is a beautiful living space. That's my goal. So I'm going to trade one for another. But the beauty is that when I decide to make that trade, the purchasing power is going to remain within that element, which is going to allow me to buy a nicer home, more likely, which is fascinating. So once again, that's a little bit deeper. I probably went deeper than I probably need to, and ask questions with that, Adrienne, because I know sometimes I can get a little bit off in that discussion, but hopefully that makes sense. The point that I want to go back to, though, is where is it that you're outsourcing these areas of your life? Financial is just one of them. We can talk about many others, but the financial piece, which was just an example that happened here in our family, or at least in our close proximity over the last 24 hours, was just something that was easy for me to speak about. So anyways, I'll turn this back over to you, Adrienne, as far as, ask questions. If I can clarify anything with that as well. I know you and I have had this discussion, and I think you understand it relatively well, even though it's very difficult to do because it's a completely different mindset shift. But once again, if you're standing on that edge of the coin, you can have both of these dialogues and push back against one versus the other, and then come up to whatever decision it is for you, because ultimately it's what you decide, Not what your neighbor decides, not what any of those people in those 200 people in that room decide. It matters what you decide. Anyways, any thoughts, sweetheart?
Yeah. So one question I had for you, you talked about, and you might have said that this is for a later episode, but I just think it would help to get just a definition, at least of what you believe it to be. You spoke on true money. Could you help us understand what your idea of true money is again?
So to me, once again, so this is how I believe it to be, right? So there's a lot of folks listening that are going to push back even what I'm about ready to say. But the whole point that I really want to drive home today is that it's purchasing power. It's having your wealth stored in something that's not going to be devalued. That's what's happening with our currency. And it's happening all around the world. Every single currency in the world is being devalued. And it's being done on purpose. Now, once again, you can blame, push, point fingers here. That's not the point. Once you figure that out, that is an accurate thought, then you can start taking some different actions against that. But it's protecting your purchasing power of your wealth moving forward for future purchases. Because at some point you're going to want to change that wealth and turn that wealth into something else. Or it might be passed on to different generations, right? It could be, so I acquired some things when my father passed. And same thing. If I still have some assets, they're going to be passed on to you and your brother and your sister or the family in general. But that's the whole point. It's going to be converted into something else in the future. And you want that devaluation to be as little, or at least as close to zero as you possibly can. So you're just maintaining your purchasing power of your future self to buy the things that you need and want. Hopefully does that help?
Yeah, that was wonderful. And you also mentioned looking for certain individuals who have those same ideas or differing ideas. Could you name a few that you've learned from, or anybody specific that you would recommend listening to or trying to learn from or comparing between? Is there anyone specific you like to listen to their content that they create?
Wow. So we're still talking about precious metals, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to hear the side of the story about the gentleman standing in front of the room last night, if you want to learn more about that, which once again I encourage you to do that as well, CNBC, anything like that on TV is probably going to teach you that type of thing. Anything talking about the stock market and everything's great and it's always going to be great. That's where you're going to hear that information, is on the main channels like that. Now, if you want to go a little bit deeper, I'll name a couple and obviously ask more questions if you want to learn more. I will tell you that the gentleman that I've learned the most from his name is David McElvaney, and he is a precious metals dealer. He's out in Durango, Colorado, but they have a podcast just like what we're listening to here today that I've been listening to for 12 years, weekly for 12 years. I don't think I've probably missed an episode, maybe a handful here and there. But what he does is he's a very big student of the macro economy. So the world economy, not just here in our local US of A, not even just local here to your city, your state, but he's a macro econ, like he looks at the big picture and brings that back into teaching you, okay, why is that important? I love that. So as I've discussed here on the podcast before, I'm not necessarily the best at reading and comprehending, but when somebody is explaining things to me, I can pick it up really quickly. He's really good at that. So David McElvaney, the McElvaney Weekly Commentary, I believe is the name of the podcast. That would be number one. I'm trying to think if there's another one. Right now, two other gentlemen are coming to my mind. One is Andy Schechtman, and I'll try to get it's pronounced Schechtman. It's spelled a little bit different. I'll make sure I get that in the show notes. He has a YouTube channel. I watch and listen to him as well. Once again, these guys are precious metals dealers. So you've got to take that into account. They're trying to sell you product as well. So once again, that's where you're going to want to take both sides of this story. But then another gentleman that I really appreciate and I get a lot of information from, I listened to him just yesterday, his name is Luke Groman. Luke Groman. He, in my opinion, has probably got the biggest and best grasp of what's really going on in the, once again, in the world, which is then impacting us here in the States. I was listening to him. He just had an episode or a recording that was probably a day or two old when I listened to it yesterday. So I try to catch any interviews that he has to kind of keep up to speed with what his thoughts and philosophies are in the world. So those are 3 resources. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Hopefully that helps our listeners even have somewhere to at least get started is what I was looking for. Just a platform to at least get started and just hear things and start questioning and then look for the differing ideas. So thank you
So,
for sharing.
so YouTube is a great place right now. They have gotten through the censorship piece, I think, more than what was going on even just a few years ago. So you're seeing both sides of stories. So real estate is something that we talk about here on the podcast and obviously in our family life. And I shared an episode that I found with my children yesterday. If anybody's interested in that, reach out to me, info@richmind.co. I wouldn't mind sharing that with you as well if you're interested. But the idea is that he was proclaiming, or he was stating a fact, or what his idea of what a fact was with the real estate market. And he was proclaiming that he thinks that it's going to be going down, like quickly and badly in the near future. But it was ironic that later on yesterday, or when I was actually, after watching that video, I was seeing through my feed the opposite argument, that we are on the verge of a hockey stick exponential growth. So I was like, wow, there again, that's standing on. And I watched those gentlemen as well. Now it was interesting because it didn't necessarily match up with my current beliefs, because I would probably fall more on the side of, I think that things are going to be correcting sometime soon. So it was interesting. So I was putting myself through this exercise literally just yesterday, and I try to do it every day. So that's what the encouragement is with this episode here today, folks, is find people on both sides of whatever belief system, whatever argument that you're really steadfast on. I see a lot of times you'll see in people's feeds, whether it's social media, Facebook, whatever, and they're arguing for something. And you'll find just as many people arguing for the opposite side. And what I'm asking you to do here today, after listening to us, is stand on the edge and get both sides of the argument and make your decision. Get in the driver's seat of your life. Quit outsourcing these ideas of what your family says, what your mom says, what your dad says, what your school says, what your church says, whatever it is. Bring it back in-house and start thinking for yourself. That's what I want to encourage everybody here today. So, any more questions like that, Adrienne? I love it when you ask me things, because then it helps me bring things out. Is there anything else to maybe bring to this episode here today? And then if not, then we'll start wrapping it up. Any more thoughts?
Yeah. So one thing that you and I have worked on in previous conversations and things that we have that I've found fault even in myself is that, and you've even told me, um, sometimes I get steadfast in my own beliefs. I think I'm right, and I think this, and I think that. And sometimes when you hit a differing idea or something like that, you get frustrated. So the one thing that I would ask you, if it would be good for our listeners or not, would be is do you think it would be okay, or do you think it would be a good idea for them to try to start smaller? Maybe not go after the white whale, so to say, from the beginning. Precious metals can be pretty polarizing subject. Politics is pretty polarizing. Things like religion, education, pretty polarizing topics. Do you think it would be a good idea for our listeners to start with a smaller topic, such as like parenting, things we've talked about before, idea of paradigms, and even just playing with some of those relationships, things that are a little bit not quite as strong of differing sides of opinions. However, but you can still be on the edge for some of those topics. Would you recommend starting there?
I would. So, yeah. So, in my opinion, where I think everybody should start with this exercise, because it's an exercise, it's a thought experiment, is in your journaling process. I'm always encouraging you, everyone, to journal. Get your journal out, start writing things down. But the idea is that you're going to start noticing these triggers that are going on in your environment all the time. They can be big or they can be small. So the other piece that I want to throw in here today is think through from the second you wake up till the second you go to bed. And it shouldn't take more than just a couple of minutes to think through an entire day. Where is it that you're outsourcing your activities? And I'm talking about as little of getting up and having to be at work at a certain time, having to do a certain task at work that is mindless. It's like you don't put any thought into it. Where is it, categories like that, where is it in your life that you're mindlessly doing activities that I'm not saying you need to get rid of them. That's not what I'm saying. I just want you to become aware of them. Because yes, when you start seeing the patterns in your day-to-day activities that you're outsourcing to other people because you believe that there's no other way. You believe that there's no time. You believe that you have to keep your job. You believe that your boss, you see what I'm saying? You believe that your family, whatever ritual you have, right? You believe these certain things. Once you start recognizing them, like you encourage smaller things, right? Just regular, everyday, day-to-day life stuff. Then you can start maybe taking it to the bigger picture, financial, business, all those kinds of things. Because yes, it requires a little bit more in-depth thinking to be successful with a lot of those things, especially if you're going to bring those ideas in-house. But yes, you can easily start thinking through, and that would be my encouragement as soon as you get off this episode here today. Go through an entire day, and where are you outsourcing your thoughts? Meaning, where are you outsourcing your mindless activity to other people? And just become aware of it.
One point I wanted to add too, saw something yesterday that I've been trying to pay more attention to myself. And I had it so social media is a big thing. It can help or it can hinder your growth. It's something you and I have talked about working on for a long time. I used to be a person, TikTok was a big thing, and I would just sit there and just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. Um, and now it's not that I've gotten rid of it completely. I do still have it. I try to use it more as educational rather than just entertainment all the time. But there was a creator that I follow that was on there yesterday who was talking about her management team and people that she works with. Because that's the thing now that I don't know. I'm sure more people understand now, but there's some people out there that don't understand social media for a majority of creators on there now is their business. That's how they're creating their money. That's influencers are such a thing now, that it's a business, and you watching their videos, that's you consuming their content. That's you giving them dollars. You're changing your time for dollars for them. Um, and one thing that she had said is that her management had encouraged her to try different tactics, to get different people to watch, other channels or other, forms of media that she was putting out. And she even said that she went outside of her own personal comfort zone and started to act crazy, where she was drinking on camera and traveling and doing things that are outside of her normal and almost playing a character, um, to try to increase traffic for people to think her life was more interesting than it was. And that her management team came back to her and they were like, okay, from September 1st through 10th, you did amazing. You had great interaction. You had so many people looking at your page. And then from the 10th till today, it's dropped off dramatically. What did you change? And one thing that she said was, she said, well, I stopped playing that crazy person character. I went back to creating content and videos that I enjoy, that I liked making, that are more true to me. And the management team went back to her and they said, well, you need to go back to what you were doing. People don't want to see you as an individual. They don't relate to your individual life. They're on social media to enjoy and to live through someone else, and see someone living things that they don't personally experience. That's why you're on social media. That's why you get those mindless scrolls happening. So it's almost, I would ask our listeners to almost pay attention to what you are enjoying and just try to remember that everything you see isn't necessarily the truth. Um, don't believe everything. Everyone always says, don't believe everything on the internet. And that's true. And that comes to social media and creators and everything like that. It's so easy to create a facade these days with AI, with the help. There's teams out there that's their job, is to help create this perfect picture for you as a viewer to enjoy. So I would just encourage those to seek truth and to try to use social media more as a tool to help educate yourself rather than a mindless entertainment source. And that's okay sometimes. I mean, I even find myself scrolling on puppy videos just like everybody else. Um, but try not to spend so much time doing that and try to focus back in on that growth, that trying to find a more of a purpose within your social media and with your time. It's just something I thought was interesting that I saw the other day. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, you're 100% accurate, meaning it's just mindlessly scrolling, looking at other people's things, comparing what you have to what they have. It's an amazing thing when you really think about it. And you're right, there are times that I will allow myself to scroll too. I'm human just like everybody else, but I try to be as aware of it when I'm doing it. So that way, once again, when I've reached the limit of what I should do, I'm able to turn it off. I'm able to realize that what I'm seeing, like you said, may not be as accurate, may not be as true as what's being portrayed. I've met plenty of folks in my journey that their front of stage is perfect. They've got the perfect family, perfect life. They've got the cars, they've got the families, they've got the houses, right? They've got the investments, they've got. But in reality, their back of stage, what's really going on in the world, in their world, is chaotic and it's a complete disaster. I've met more than a few people like that, which is unfortunate, which is where for me, when I show up in our conversations, I try to be as transparent as I possibly can. Now, am I perfect? Absolutely not. Not proclaiming that I'm perfect. And Adrienne, you can vouch for that because I own up to try to
Me
be
either.
yeah, exactly. We're all just trying to do what we can. So that's why we're in these conversations. I just try to bring things to people's awareness. And if you can become aware of these things, just like when you become aware of your triggers, and then you become aware of your core wounds, and then you become aware of your paradigms, and you become aware of your outsourcing of different areas of your life, you can start to bring that once again back in-house and start making different choices. And if those choices are what's going to dictate what your future becomes. It's as simple as that. I think everybody's making it more difficult than it needs to be. They're looking for the perfect thing, and this so and so has got this perfect, and I want that perfect. And in reality, you can have it. You just have to live and start with the basics, which is what we're talking about here today with this three-sided coin. Staying on the edge as much as you possibly can and looking at both sides of any argument. Doesn't matter what it is, any argument. Start there. Start there today. And if you start doing that more consistently, you're going to be able to start consistently taking better action, which is going to get you this outcome that you're actually looking for. And that's what I would encourage for everybody here today. So Adrienne, as always, I appreciate you coming on. Just fun conversations. We try to have them often offline, and it's always fun to have you on and try to bring out and see your wisdom. And so I just appreciate it. It's so much fun to hear you articulate your thoughts as well. And hopefully folks listening out there to us here today, you're finding value in the message as well. So go out there. If you wouldn't mind heading out to your podcast platform of choice and leaving us a review, just let us know what you're thinking about the discussions that we're having. I know these aren't mainstream discussions. These aren't the things that you're going to find on the mainstream, and that's fine. I'm not gonna resonate with a lot of folks, but if you're listening to me consistently, I am. And once again, I appreciate and thank you for joining us here so far in this episode. And that would be my only ask, is if you would leave us some feedback. Let us know what you think. If you've got some pushback, I'm good with that too. I can take the negative comments just as much as I can take the positive ones, right? And there's going to be both. And that's okay, because I'm going to keep striving to be the best version of myself that I possibly can on each episode. That's my goal. That's the goal with my guests, with Adrienne, when I have Greg on here with me, or any other guest that I have on. That's the goal. So we're going to continue to do that as much as possibly can, or Or you can also send us an email at info@richmind.co and connect with us that way. We'd also love to hear from you as well as far as what you're thinking, different ideas. If you have questions, if you want us to go a little bit deeper on some of the things that we discussed here today, we can definitely do that offline. And that would be the best way to reach us as info@richmind.co as well. So once again, stand on that edge as much as you can throughout your day-to-day. Where are you outsourcing a lot of your activities, and try to bring or at least be aware of them as much as you possibly can going through your days. And I promise you, if you can do that more consistently, you're going to be able to take different actions, and those different actions are going to give you different results. And my guess is that those results that when you're taking those actions are going to be what you're looking for more so than maybe your current environment is here today. So go out there, focus on being great. Thank you for joining us here today. And we look forward to coming back with the next episode again very soon, folks. Until then, bye now.